Good evening and welcome. First up on this bulletin, a WION exclusive. Amidst China's aggression, America's largest warship is conducting naval exercises with the Indian Navy. The naval exercise, together with Indian Navy and the USS Nimitz, is held off the coast of Andaman and Nicobar Island. Nimitz is one of the world's largest warships, which entered the Indian Ocean by crossing the Malacca Strait on Saturday along with accompanying warships. The strait is a narrow strait between Malaysia and Indonesia, which is a crucial global choke point as considerable global oil flows from it a violent face-off after China took premeditated and planned action that was directly responsible for the resulting violence and casualties. China has its only overseas military base in Djibouti in the Horn of Africa, located strategically at the mouth of the crucial sea lanes connecting the Suez Canal, Gulf of Aden and wider Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, it looks a significant possibility that Australia may join India, the US and Japan for Malabar exercises expected to happen later this year. All four countries already have a working arrangement called Quad, whose foreign ministers met last year. Now, WION's principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, is joining us live from New Delhi. Good evening to you, Siddhant. Now, with China's aggression on the various fronts, America's largest warship is now conducting naval exercises with the Indian Navy. Take us through the significance of this joint Navy drill.
Well, Alison, it is not only significant, but it is symbolism and messaging at multiple levels. Messaging of concert of democracies, given the fact that how India has been strengthening its relationship with Washington, Japan, Australia and other democracies in doing the exercises. But if you look at the development coming in the backdrop of an aggressive China. We know the Chinese have been aggressive with the Indians. Last month saw the violent face-off between the Indian and the Chinese forces at the line of actual control when the Chinese tried to disrupt the patrolling pattern of the Indian forces. That led to death of 20 Indian soldiers. There were casualties on the Chinese side as well, but the Chinese side hasn't confessed or come out with the numbers. But it looks like the new theater globally is the Indian Ocean. The vital importance of Indian Ocean is something that that has been highlighted by India and other countries, because hinted on South China Sea, saying that is part of the global commons. Remember, the Chinese claim 90% of South China Sea, and if the same principle is applied in the Indian Ocean, that can be a trouble for the Chinese. So clearly it's a message to Beijing that it needs to calm down, it needs to be less aggressive and deal with the world under the current rules and respect the current rules. This is something China is clearly not doing, trying to be very aggressive, and that is why the exercises between the Indian naval forces and the American naval forces are important.
Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. This phrase originated sometime in the 18th century, but it could not have been more relevant today, especially when one is talking about the tensions at the line of actual control. This is the undefined border dividing India and China, the two nuclear-armed Asian giants. The last 30 days have been among the most tense in the history of the LAC. 20 Indian troops died in action in the Galwan skirmish on the 15th of June. An unspecified number of Chinese troops were killed. There have been multiple rounds of talks, a lot of rhetoric and many top-level visits, but how much of this has resulted in de-escalation along the line of actual control? We'll look at this over the next 3 minutes. Let me start by telling you that 1 month on, China has not revealed any casualty numbers. No surprises there. But what is almost unprecedented is India's approach, India's response to the standoff. New Delhi knows it is dealing with a difficult neighbor, so it is sending a message of peace and at the same time not mincing words while warning China against future provocation. What New Delhi is also doing is setting new traditions and preparing for the worst. On the 3rd of July, Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Indian troops at Ladakh. Like we told you earlier, Indian leaders rarely visit front lines. The Prime Minister sent a message of peace from Ladakh. He also told Beijing that the age of expansionism is over. This morning, Ladakh saw another high-profile visit. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh landed with top defence officials. He reviewed the ground situation, he visited forward military locations and interacted with the troops. The Defence Minister also addressed Indian soldiers at the Lukung post near the Pangong Lake. His message had the same tone as that of the Prime Minister. He said that India believes in Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, meaning the world is one family. But India is not shy of giving a befitting reply to any provocation.
हम अशांति नहीं चाहते, हम शांति चाहते। हमारा चरित्र रहा है कि हमने दुनिया के किसी भी देश के स्वाभिमान पर चोट पहुंचाने की कभी कोशिश नहीं की। लेकिन यह भी मैं कह देना चाहता हूं दो टूक शब्दों में, यदि कोई दुनिया की ताकत हमारे स्वाभिमान पर चोट पहुंचाने की कोशिश करेगी तो उसे किसी भी सूरत में हम बर्दाश्त नहीं करेंगे, उसका हम मुंहतोड़ जवाब देने के लिए भी तैयार रहेंगे।
The Defence Minister added, whatever talks have happened so far, these are his words, the matter should be resolved. But to what extent it would be resolved, I cannot guarantee. In other words, China cannot be trusted. So India spoke to China in the language it understands best. From tanks carrying out military exercises to para-drops by Indian troops, Delhi displayed its military muscle. Beijing, of course, was watching all of this. China has promised peace, but how much of this promise does it plan to keep? To answer this, let's look at the situation along the LAC a month since the Galwan skirmish. There's been a pullback at patrolling points 14, 15 and 17A. Indian troops and the PLA have created a buffer zone of 1 to 4 kilometers, meaning at these patrolling points, the two sides are no longer eyeball to eyeball. At the Pangong Lake, there remains a problem though. Remember, the LAC here runs through water and mountain folds jutting into the lake are called fingers. The Chinese troops had come till the finger 4. Now they've gone back to finger 5. But this is far from complete withdrawal because India insists that the PLA return to the pre-standoff position, that is return to finger 8. Clearly, there's been little progress in the Pangong Tso in the last 1 month. There have been several rounds of diplomatic and military level talks between India and China in the last 30 days. Officials of the Indian Army and the PLA have met thrice since the skirmish. The first military level talks were on the 22nd of June. The last round was held on the 14th of July. There have also been 2 rounds of diplomatic talks between the two sides. There was also a phone conversation between India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi. This was on the 5th of July. But how much of this will convert into complete de-escalation or disengagement, as they're calling it. Like the Indian Defence Minister said, when it comes to China, there is no guarantee. So I end with where I started. The best way forward for India would be to hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
Some breaking news is now coming in. The Indian Army has released a statement on the situation at the line of actual control with China, and the Army has said that both sides were engaged in discussions to de-escalate the situation in Ladakh. The statement said that the commander-level talks on the 14th of July were consistent with the consensus reached between the special representatives from India and China on the 5th of July. The Indian and Chinese commanders reviewed the progress made in the first phase of disengagement and discussed further steps. The two sides also reiterated their commitment to the objective of complete disengagement. The Indian Army has described the process as intricate and needing constant verification. Now remember, this is a de-escalation between the border standoff between India and China that took place in Galwan Valley, and now the recent update that we have for you is the Indian Army saying that both sides were in fact engaged in discussions to de-escalate the situation in Ladakh, where the border standoff took place. And this border standoff was followed by statements from both sides. In fact, India banned about 59 Chinese apps that were operational in India and are now no longer operational. As of now, the Indian Army has said that commander-level talks took place on the 14th of July and they were consistent with the consensus. Now, for more updates on this story, Siddhant Sibal, our diplomatic correspondent, is joining us live. Siddhant, tell us, what does this mean? This is obviously a clear sign of de-escalation. So tell us more.
Well, the first and the official statement by the Indian side, by the Indian Army on the 14th of July talks, the military talks which took place between India and China. This, of course, was the first talks this month, but fourth talks since 6th of June when the first conversations happened. But a short statement has been released a short while ago by the Indian Army, and the statement talks about this disengagement process, how they are focusing on the process which has already taken place and now focusing on the next step forward. But what is important, the last para of the statement says that it's an intricate process and it will require verification. The fact that the Indian Army has mentioned verification shows that there is a cautiousness this time dealing with the Chinese, because last time after the 6th of June talks, the Chinese went against the consensus and that led to the violent face-off on 15th of June. So by and large, the Indian Army confirming that disengagement has happened and progress is on, steps are being taken by both sides.
Right. Now, Siddhant, as you rightfully mentioned, that this is obviously an intricate process, which is also what the government has highlighted, and the government is being cautious in dealing with China. And of course, over the last few weeks, we've seen reactions and retaliation from both sides, with India also banning 59 Chinese apps. And now, of course, we're hearing that both sides are committed to de-escalation on the border. So tell us what really lies ahead in the coming few days and weeks.
Well, the next step forward is the process of disengagement, that it continues and there is a verification on the ground. That is the emphasis of the statement by the Indian Army. We know the Chinese have already reacted. Yesterday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson reacted, but that was a generic statement talking about the positive aspects that both sides have agreed and continue to engage through diplomatic and military means. We know that on diplomatic side as well, both sides have been engaging. There were talks last week, the latest rounds of diplomatic talks, but by and large 4 rounds of conversations have happened at the military level, 3 rounds last month, and progressively there has been increase in the time period, because we know that on 14th of July when talks took place, the talks ended at 2 a.m. Indian Standard Time, that's 4:30 a.m. Beijing time. The talks lasted for 15 hours. Before that, the talks lasted for approximately 11 and 12 hours on 22nd and 30th of June. So the talks are taking place. Both sides are now hoping that only through talk that there is no repetition of what happened on 15th of June when we know that there were casualties on both sides. 20 Indian soldiers lost their lives, and both sides are eager that there is no repetition of that incident. But we are dealing with a very aggressive China, and you never know what Chinese do next.
Right. Now, you mentioned an aggressive China, and the timing of this de-escalation also needs to be highlighted, because this comes on a day or at a time when there is global action being taken against China. We know about the tensions between US and China, Trump's executive order, as well as the fate of Huawei in the 5G situation in the UK. And obviously now this news of de-escalation. So can we also talk about the timing of this?
Well, China has been very aggressive since the start of this year, and this coming amidst the COVID pandemic, a virus whose first case came from China, and we have seen since then the aggressiveness has led to a lot of reaction, not only from India but other neighbors of China, including from Japan. Just few days ago, the Japanese came out with white paper on defense talking about the Chinese aggressiveness, and of course we know the right now situation between Washington and Beijing. So clearly the world is divided between China and the rest, and now of course we have seen progressively pressure increasing on Beijing, but Beijing has its own ways. Beijing sees the world in a new way. It sees the rise of China, and it perhaps is looking at the COVID crisis an opportunity, a God-given perhaps opportunity to make sure that China is the global superpower. But it looks difficult as of now because increasingly Washington, New Delhi, Tokyo, Canberra and other countries are coming together. We know yesterday only India-EU summit took place, and clearly if you look at the wordings of both the EU leadership and the Indian Prime Minister, they specifically emphasized on the need that democratic nations should come together.
The Defence Minister is being accompanied by the Chief of Defence Staff, Bipin Rawat, and Army Chief General M.M. Naravane. In Ladakh, Rajnath Singh reviewed the ground situation and visited forward military locations. The Defence Minister also interacted with the troops stationed in Ladakh during the first leg of his visit. He addressed Indian troops at the Lukhung, which is a village from where Pangong Tso Lake can be accessed from the Indian side. In a strongly worded speech, the Defence Minister said that foreign powers will not be allowed to take over even an inch of India's foreign territory. At the same time, he welcomed the diplomatic and military talks underway between India and China.
जो कुछ अब तक की प्रगति हुई है बातचीत की, मामला हल होना चाहिए, लेकिन कहां तक हल होगा अभी इस संबंध में मैं पूरे कोई गारंटी नहीं दे सकता हूं। लेकिन मैं इतना यकीन दिलाना चाहता हूं कि भारत की 1 इंच जमीन को भी दुनिया की कोई ताकत छू नहीं सकती है, उस पर कब्जा नहीं कर सकती। लेकिन बातचीत के द्वारा यदि समाधान निकलता है तो इससे अच्छी बात और कोई दूसरी नहीं हो सकती है। वह सिलसिला चल रहा है, मिलिट्री लेवल पर भी बातचीत चल रही है, डिप्लोमेटिक बातचीत भी चल रही है।
Rajnath Singh also highlighted India's unique position in history as a country that has never waged a war against another nation. He talked about the Indian ideal of treating the entire world as one family, but warned that any act of foreign aggression will be met with a strong response.
दुनिया का यह इकलौता देश है जिसने भारत की सीमा में रहने वाले लोगों को ही अपने परिवार का सदस्य नहीं माना है, बल्कि पूरे विश्व की धरा पर रहने वाले लोगों को अपने परिवार का सदस्य मानते हुए वसुधैव कुटुंबकम का संदेश सारे विश्व को किसी एक देश ने दिया है तो हमारे और आपके देश भारत ने दिया है। हम अशांति नहीं चाहते, हम शांति चाहते हैं। हमारा चरित्र रहा है कि हमने दुनिया के किसी भी देश के स्वाभिमान पर चोट पहुंचाने की कभी कोशिश नहीं की। लेकिन यह भी मैं कह देना चाहता हूं 2 टूक शब्दों में, यदि कोई दुनिया की ताकत हमारे स्वाभिमान पर चोट पहुंचाने की कोशिश करेगी तो उसे किसी भी सूरत में हम बर्दाश्त नहीं करेंगे, उसका हम मुंहतोड़ जवाब देने के लिए भी तैयार रहेंगे।
Earlier in the day, Indian troops at Stakna near Leh performed paradrops and other military exercises in the presence of Rajnath Singh.
कॉम्बैट फ्री कॉलर के बीच बॉर्डर निर्धारित न होने की वजह से सीमा पर तैनात सैनिक ज्यादा होना। अब मैं स्पेशल फोर्सेस द्वारा
The Defence Minister also reviewed scoping weapons and was seen with a Pika machine gun.
मानस भाई मानस भाई
This visit comes just 2 weeks after Prime Minister Modi's Ladakh trip, where he condemned Chinese aggression and expansionism. In Jammu and Kashmir, the government is attempting to send the message that it is equally serious about the western sector and cross-border terror from Pakistan. In the last 2 months, there has been a rise in violence in Jammu and Kashmir, with multiple infiltration bids and ceasefire violations at the LOC.